day 2 here in Mexico. Did not fall in the pool today with my phone, which is excellent. However, I did listen to a lot of David Chang's podcast sitting underneath an umbrella yesterday. And if you're not familiar with David Chang, he has, I would say, my personal favorite Netflix show right now called Ugly Delicious. It came out quite a while ago. I think it is one of the most unique shows about food that I've ever seen, because every episode kind of hooks you in with the food and then gets you really connected to a big story behind the scenes of what's happening. And it really does. It's very much in the realm kind of an Anthony Bourdain show, where it begins with kind of that food hook and then just really gets you involved with the story and really tells a true and honest story and gets the key players and the right people actually involved, rather than just like going out and whoever the tourism director of that country is, like talking with them. It's like, no, you're going to find the real people that are in the kitchen or have created successful businesses, or it's a really cool show, and I hope that you watch it. And if you don't, then check out David Chang's podcast, because it's really good as well. He has kind of two of them. They kind of both go out in tandem. I'm picking episodes from each, I guess. And yeah, the one that I started with is maybe the most insane episode. It's with David Cho, who is one of my favorite individuals as far as just like observing goes. There's a lot about David Cho out there in the world, but there's not nearly enough, I don't think. He did a show on Vice a few years ago where he just like hitchhiked around the world, and his interview is like 2 hours with David Chang, and it's really interesting. He's a very, very challenging person to listen to at some points. Definitely like views don't line up with people, but I feel like also his thing is that he likes to push things that maybe he doesn't even truly believe in order to create a better conversation. And he's willing to kind of be the person that pushes it in that direction to come up with something that would not have been talked about if he wouldn't have been bold enough to kind of go where he's at. David Cho is also the guy that painted the Facebook murals for stock options in the very beginning. So as soon as Facebook kind of blew up, he got like super crazy rich. And his life's also very interesting in the sense that he had a successful gambling career, playing like Baccarat and different things in Las Vegas. He was very successful at it, and he didn't really need the money from his actual art. So he was just like, whatever, this painting's now going to be 20 grand because I don't need the money. Or he wouldn't sell them, that he would just have all these paintings and they would just not be for sale. And he learned pretty quickly that if something is not for sale, that the richest people in the world want it immediately, and they're not going to be paying $10,000 for it anymore. They're going to try to hit you with a number that just like is so out of this world that you're going to say yes. And I feel like he just says no at that point. It's like, yeah, I'll give you $2 million for this painting that was listed for $5,000 2 weeks ago. And knowing what I know of Cho's personality, I feel like he literally would just say no, because he likes to keep life interesting. And I think that's an important lesson for all of us. All right, today, Pavlos asked on Instagram. I put up a little Instagram thing on my Instagram story yesterday asking for a few podcast questions. So I'm going to answer a few of those over the next couple days, just kind of the broader topics. So today he asked specifically about my editing process, how I edit, and how I deliver to couples. And so I guess I have multiple different editing processes depending on the job. The most common for me is the thing that I do the most and that I do the most like just sheer editing volume of is definitely 100% weddings. So for weddings, I outsource everything, and I come home from the wedding day. I use a company called Evolve Edits. It's Sal Sincata's company. And when I get home from the wedding, I download all the images to 2 separate hard drives, just like straight from the cards. I don't use any sort of software that downloads it for me. I don't use Photomechanic to do like the import. I just literally go on the cards, grab the folders, 2 different drives. One is my working drive. One is my backup drive that I never touch. From my working drive, I build a Lightroom catalog of previews, and that previews, they're smart previews. So if you're unfamiliar with those, in Lightroom, you can build, I don't know how many megapixels they are. I think they're like maybe 4 or 5, but they're fully editable, like DNG files embedded inside your Lightroom catalog. And I zip this up and I send it to Evolve, and it brings, usually I would say that I shoot like 80 gigabytes total of images at a wedding, maybe like 60, I would say 60 to 80 images, pretty much gigabytes at every wedding. And that zips it down to almost like 3 gigabytes, maybe like 2. And I upload that to Evolve. They do all my culling, they do all of my editing, and they send it back to me. Usually by the Friday. I think their turnaround time's like 5 days. It's pretty good. There are lots of other companies out there. My advice would be that if you are looking at outsourcing, that if you can find somebody locally to do that outsourcing for you, that is the best possible situation. Somebody that can either come to your physical house and learn exactly what you do so that they're able to just like immediately be on the same page. We've also trained our assistant in the past, Alex, she was a very good video editor in the beginning, but she was not, she had never even like been inside Lightroom before. And within like 4 or 5 hours, because the wedding photography like editing process, I think is pretty simple for the most part. She was able to get up to speed. I would say maybe like 3 weddings in, she was pretty much at like 100% of what we would have done. So if you can find a person and train them and you have like face-to-face contact and accountability in that way, I think that's the best possible way. And I would have no problems paying a little bit more for that. What I've found is that there is for sure kind of like a couple year burnout that nobody really wants to sit there and edit images forever, especially if you don't get the fun part of actually shooting the wedding day. So I would have an editor on average, I would say for like maybe a season and a half, and then you'd have to go through that training process again. This time, at that point, I just hopped over to Evolve because it seemed easy enough, and their pricing, maybe type my name in the referral box if you decide to go with them, but it's $199 a month to be part of their subscription, but it's unlimited photos edited. So anything you submit, they'll edit. As far as like weddings go, I don't submit like engagements or anything else or families to them, just weddings only. But shooting like 72 weddings a year, that $199 a month, which is like what, $6,000 a year, definitely saves me like hundreds and hundreds of hours. I think that the hardest part about editing a wedding is actually sitting down to begin the process. And I know a lot of us will spend, if not days, weeks even, not necessarily not wanting to edit, but just not sitting down and editing that first image. Once you do that, I can edit an entire wedding. It's actually part of some of my courses. I can edit a wedding in about 2 hours, I would say. It takes me about 40 minutes to call. It takes me about maybe an hour and a half. So maybe a little bit more than 2 hours to do everything. And while that's great, I can't sustain that level of focus and that level of work all summer, especially when I'm shooting weddings. If I'm doing like Friday, Saturday, Sunday weddings, I'm going to want to take like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off just to kind of like recharge a little bit or focus on different content, exercising different outlets, I guess, because if I'm constantly working in the photography space, I find that I just get a little bit bored with it, and kind of doing the same thing over and over again does become personally challenging for me. But by doing 70 weddings, I've been doing 70 weddings a year for almost 10 years now. As long as you kind of find that balance and the things that make you happy and outsource the things that make you have mental struggles, you can actually create a life and a business that you're happy with. And then also you kind of take that happiness to every wedding day, that you are like, you can be a super happy, easygoing, like really fun photographer on the wedding day, because there's no residual stress about like, oh, every time I hit the button, every time I hit the shutter button, now I'm going to have to be like culling through that image and editing that image. Just knowing that all of that is just kind of taken care of really does relax me and make me a better photographer on the actual wedding day. So the way that, getting back to kind of the process, send that smart preview catalog to Evolve. They send it back to me. And at that point, I have a preset that I put on everything. They will, most companies like them or Shoot.edit or Photographers Edit, which Lindsay uses and she absolutely loves. They're a little bit more expensive, but she's been having almost like 100% accuracy with like them using her preset as well and like giving her fantastic images back. What I ask for is just a straight boring edit from them so that they're giving me something that I can add my preset to. I'm not having them add my preset. And I come up with a different or a modification of my preset, my summer 2018 Cool. On pretty much every wedding, I modify it a little bit in order to make up for any mistakes that they made. And the mistakes, for the most part, whether you're using them or you're using a different company, I find that they're pretty global. So the entire gallery is going to come back a little bit too cool, or it's going to come back a little bit too bright or a little bit too dark. So you're able to make your preset kind of make up for however they didn't kind of finish the images in the way that you wanted. So I find that that's kind of the easiest way for me and the easiest way to maintain my consistency as well, which is by far the most important part to have like consistent images going out to all your couples. After that, I export from Lightroom and they're pretty much ready to go. I put them up on a PixieSet gallery and then send the couple the link. That is, I guess, the most streamlined you can probably make a process, especially when you're dealing with volume, and it makes me happy. So that is my wedding editing process. For engagement photos, it's a little bit different because I actually edit all of those myself, because I find that by the time that I edit the images, if it would have taken me the same amount of time to actually like zip everything and send it off to Evolve to edit. I shoot, this might be a little bit, I'm going to make another podcast episode just about this, I think, in the future. For engagements, for family shoots, for couple shoots, or anything else that I have full control over the conditions that I'm shooting in, that I can get to the shade. If the shade is too dark and too green on faces, I can move them a bit. I can bring them out to the edge of the forest. When I'm shooting everything 100% right in camera and I have the ability to do that, I am editing from my JPEGs because I really love delighting in my Nikon camera. The way that it makes everything look, that natural contrast, the developing that the camera actually does. I noticed that whenever I was loading the raw files into Lightroom, that I was just like going and processing to make it look exactly like the JPEG, and it never really looked as good as a JPEG. It was like 98% of the way there. So I figured that like, hey, I might as well skip this step. If the images are pretty much just finished, I might as well just deliver those. So I go through, I cull out anything that sucks, and then I leave, usually for an engagement session, it's somewhere like 50 to 80 images, and I have those in a folder. I load them usually into Lightroom to apply a watered down version of my preset. It's because you're editing a JPEG, it's a little more destructive than a raw file. So I don't really do as much. I also don't really need to do as much. It's just a few little color shifts that won't cause banding or anything like that. And then I deliver. And that process to edit a family shoot, if I'm delivering 50 images, I would say it maybe takes me 15 minutes total. As long as you're shooting everything exactly right in camera, and that means shooting full manual and making sure that everything is good and consistent. And yeah, it takes like a very, very minimal amount of time. And that kind of makes me almost excited enough to know that I can go from culling to final edit in under 15 minutes on a family session. That inspires me enough to just like get them all done usually as soon as I get home. So I'll come in, I'll sit down at my computer, load in my cards, and then just start editing at that point. And usually I would say by 2 hours after most shoots, I'm completely finished with the family session. So coming home, driving home, loading cards in, editing. If the shoot started at 10 a.m., by like 11:30, 11:45, everything is done and uploaded to Dropbox, ready for delivery. Or if I'm doing it through PixieSet, for like weddings and engagements and things like that. But for my family photos, I just do a Dropbox link and they just download them and go from there. I find that that's easier. And also PixieSet, I kind of have an issue with companies that do things like this, but the busier you get, the more storage you have with PixieSet, the more they're going to charge you. So if you have a bunch of weddings up there, I guess you are using more of their storage, so it makes sense. But the more you put up there, I'm on like the 1,000 gig plan. And as soon as I hit 1,000 gigs, I'm not sure what happens. I think I have to get a custom quote by them. Or maybe I'll swindle a deal because I've mentioned them a lot of times. But it's, I don't know, it's kind of like sad to know that like the more work you do, the more family shoots you add to that, the more that's actually going to cost you money in the future, because I try to leave everything online for as long as possible. With zip files, family shoots, I will just leave those on my Dropbox forever, or at least for as long as Dropbox exists for, which I suspect will be a pretty long time. For PixieSet, I tell my couples that I'm going to leave them up as long as I can, but usually I would say it's, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7 years. I feel like all this, I was on SmugMug before moving to PixieSet, and I feel like all my SmugMug galleries are still up. So I think I just leave things up forever. It's cheap enough to do that. And I think that that's a much better situation than getting an email from a couple like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years down the road being like, hey, we just moved and we lost all our photos. And this email happens a lot. Any chance you could send us our gallery? And if you just have the SmugMug link ready to go, it's very easy for you just to resend, like even just copy and paste it from the original delivery email. Whereas if you're like uploading it to PixieSet and leaving it on there for a while, and then at some point you have to take it off, otherwise it's going to start to cost too much money. I would rather just like for the 3 times a year that pops up that I'm happy to redeliver those images to my couple. I'm happy to pay a little bit more per month to have that luxury to be the hero in their circumstance, because I know that by delivering images like within the hour of them kind of freaking out and being like, we lost all our wedding photos, we don't know where like our video is. And if you can respond within an hour and just like completely disarm the situation, you become a pretty dramatic hero. And if they weren't already referring you because they love you already, that's going to really cause them to tell like all their friends about it. So thumbs up for keeping things online forever. And you can definitely do that now on the internet. All right. That's all for today. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed the soft sounds of the ocean in the background. Oh yeah. Leaves in the wind. People swimming. Somebody out on a hobby cat. Mexico's nice. See you tomorrow.